Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Cowboys Roundup. It is me, Space Cowboy Media, and my buddy in crime, Cowboys Beat Chris. How you doing, my guy?
I am done with the Cowboys. I'm out of the fan base. I'm not going to be supporting this product anymore. I'm just joking, guys. I'm just joking. I am doing great. As I start off every episode, my eyes opened up, and everybody that I care for is healthy. So, yeah, everything else is a plus.
No, that's great. Look, we're back at it again. This is our 5th episode. We've been doing it now for a
And
month
I'm not a
now.
Mavs fan, by the way. I'm sorry.
I'm not a Mavs fan either. So I can't relate to what's going on. I'm sorry to all the Mavs fans that are going to be watching the show. But hey, this is the 5th episode. We've been doing it for a month. I appreciate, and also Chris appreciates all of the support you guys have been giving as we've done the show. And, it's been an interesting ride. Now the Cowboys are getting a decent coaching staff. Now it's on the front office to do their job. Like, I'm very impressed with where we're at. I mean, and again, this isn't Stockholm Syndrome talking. I want to be very clear. It's not my Stockholm Syndrome talking. I'm straight up impressed they got this coaching staff. So without further ado, I want to just go ahead and dive straight into it. So we're going to just go through the first big hire, honestly, in order of operations was Matt Eberflus coming back as the defensive coordinator. It was like literally immediately after Brian Schottenheimer got the job, we found out that Matt Eberflus was coming back. And a lot of people thought this was terrible. Like, a lot of fans that don't understand who not Brian Schottenheimer, Matt Eberflus is and what he's done defensively, don't realize how decent of a pickup this is. Looking at what he did in Indianapolis and also with his time in Chicago, he had top 10 scoring defenses, teams that were able to, get pressure, and also more importantly, have good passing defenses, And also, this is the key thing. He was able to stop the run. And I think a lot of people forget this. Just looking at his stats from Indianapolis with his rush defense, top 10 metrics. Really, the only time he didn't have a top 10 metric was in 2022 with Chicago, and then this year when he got fired. Otherwise, we're in a situation where you're getting a guy that is not as philosophically similar as Mike Zimmer. Like, he's not going to blitz a whole lot. But the one thing I will give him credit for is he does know how to stop the run, which is something that I've been big on. How do you feel about this hire, man?
No, it's an awesome hire. It's a really good hire here by the Jones family. I think that, there is differences between Eberflus and Mike Zimmer and Dan Quinn. But one thing that I would say is all those guys are quality defensive coordinators. Now, here's the thing when it comes to Matt Eberflus. They're going to have to get guys to play his defense, like straight up. Mike Zimmer, I don't feel like we got the most out of Mike Zimmer, not because of Mike Zimmer. It's because of the fact that we didn't do enough to get his guys on this football team. We need to get guys that fit the Matt Eberflus scheme, which is they play that attacking 4-3 front. They want to be really good at 3 technique. The linebackers are going to play very well. They're a vision defense. So that's where I like this hire. They're not going to give up a lot of big plays. I know he's synonymous for literally a big play. That's going to be the thing that's like attached to his coaching career when it came to that Washington-Chicago game. But that's not who he is. He's not a guy that's going to give up. His defenses aren't going to give up a ton of big plays. So, yeah, I think it's a very good hire here. And one thing that I like is that they're philosophically aligned when it comes to this defensive coaching staff, which is something that we didn't see in the McCarthy era due to the fact that Mike McCarthy hired bad coaches. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Hired bad coaches. And I don't think the Cowboys are doing that this time around. I think they're hiring really good coaches. And especially, you have a guy from New York. What does New York play? They play a vision defense, attacking 4-3 front. So you're seeing guys that have continuity with Matt Eberflus, that have an understanding of the scheme he wants to run. And I think that this is ultimately going to be a very good hire here for Dallas.
I completely agree. I think that when you look at all of the coaches, position coaches more specifically, that they've added on, the key point, you're aligning the coaching staff with the vision you're trying to build defensively and even offensively. And I think that while there's still some position groups on the offensive side of the ball they still have to fill, what they're doing is something that I've been wanting them to do even when Mike McCarthy came here, even when Jason Garrett was here, and even when Wade Phillips was here, is that there was an understanding that Matt Eberflus was going to come back either way. But one of the big things is that it's not a guy that sucks at his job, right? We're talking about, like, for example, like, to me, this feels like the Dan Quinn hire. Like, people were bitching and complaining about Dan Quinn because, oh, look what he did in Atlanta. And by the way, we kind of knew that Dan Quinn, the DC, is fantastic to a point. And then on top of that, you saw how dramatically the defense played better under him as opposed to what you had with Mike Nolan, who was trying to do a 3-4, but clearly you didn't have the personnel to do that.
Stinks.
It was terrible. But that's a great point. Look, Mike McCarthy, I'll give him this. He didn't have a chance to pick his OC, which, to be honest with you, if he did, I would say that he probably wanted to go with Brian Schottenheimer, but he was still under contract with Seattle, so I don't know if he would have come over here. But now, with Brian Schottenheimer being the head coach, the DC hire is great, but the next thing that really blew my mind, Chris, and I'll have you take it away from here, the OC hire, Klayton Adams, who we were both clamoring for all throughout the hiring process as an OC candidate. This guy became the OC. Like, we were shocked. We thought they were going to go in a completely different direction, but they went out and got a guy which, to your point, philosophically aligns with what Brian Schottenheimer wants to do. So tell me about what makes Klayton Adams so great. Why is he a great hire?
Well, so one of my friends, he covers the Arizona Cardinals, gave me a quote. He's elite. And, the offensive line before he got there was never good. And he made them a very solid unit with not great players over the course of the past 2 seasons. So, Adams is a guy who you're going to get creativity in the run game, which is something that we have not seen. I can't tell you the last time we saw that. So that's big because when you look at the league now, you have these teams like Miami, who have a creative run scheme. San Francisco, you can go down the line. Detroit with Ben Johnson had a really creative run scheme. We'll see what they do there now with their new offensive coordinator. But that's where the league is going. And, when we talk about this offensive line, this is a unit that you have to invest in, not just because it's the offensive line, but because you made investments at that position. You spent 2 first-round picks on Tyler Smith and Tyler Guyton. You spent a 3rd-round pick on Cooper Beebe. By the way, you're probably going to pay Tyler Smith either this offseason or next offseason. You gave a big contract to Terrence Steele, right? So there are a lot of pieces on this offensive line that you have invested in. So the Cowboys needed to get a guy in here that's going to help out this offensive line, move on from Mike Solari, which I cannot see any world in which Mike Solari returns. I know people are like worried about that. I don't think you should be worried about that. But, when we talk about philosophically being aligned, this team's going to want to run the football, which, by the way, if you have a creative run scheme and you have the running backs to do it, you can have a very good offense running the football, right? I think that the Cowboys are going to go out there and draft a running back this year. If Genti's there at 12, I believe it's probably going to be Genti. I think they're going to either that or they're going to draft a running back in the 2nd round. And the reason why I say that is because they're bringing in high-profile running back coach candidates. So I think it's because they're going to place such an emphasis on the run game and building play action off of it.
For sure. And I just want to let the people know what Klayton Adams did this year, which was absolutely fantastic. Okay. Now, I want to be very clear. There are no notable names on the Cardinals offensive line. No offense to the guys on that line, meaning like
outside of Paris Johnson.
Outside of Paris Johnson for sure. But like when I say that, I'm not saying like they're like all pro, like all that other stuff. And I think with what Klayton Adams did here, right, we're talking about 7th in the NFL in rushing yards, which also only trail, I believe, let me see here, in total rushing yards, excuse me, also had the 2nd best league rushing yards per average carry, 5.3 yards per carry. That is amazing considering how often they ran the ball. And you look at rushing touchdowns, top 10, 5th most in carries of 20 yards or more, tied for the first in the NFL in carries of 40 yards or more, right? And then you look at the group that he's joining, and he's going to have a lot more talent to work with, especially on the offensive line. And so for me, looking at what he was able to do with Arizona, also this guy is on the younger side of things. And I'm going to get into the age bracket for all of these guys, these coordinators, and even your head coach in just a moment. But for Klayton Adams, he's a guy that also has ties to Boise State, so I wouldn't be shocked if they went with Genty now. It just seems like it's a foregone conclusion as of this point in time. But I really was big on this. And I said it in the last episode when they hired Brian Schottenheimer. You need to let this dude get his guys. You need to get coordinators that will match what you want to do. Even if you guys don't like what it is, like if you're like, I'm not a big fan of running the ball because, it's a passing offense. I mean, sure, that's fine. But if you do not have a philosophy or an identity of what you're going to do, your team is screwed because it affects how you draft. It affects how you go after free agents, even though they don't really go after free agents. But that's what this year. But you're going to have to for sure. And we'll talk about that. But no, man, I really think that this was a great hire. This is the first time he's been an offensive coordinator in his entire coaching career. So congrats to him. And he's going to be doing it with a guy that wants to do what he wants to do. And for those that are worried that, like to your point, if Mike Solari, is Mike Solari going to come back? No, I don't think he is. He's on the older side. And we've kind of gotten an indication that they're not going to bring him back, especially with Lunda Wells returning as the tight ends coach, which is great. I think they're going to go look at some other options. But again, as they continue to add on the position coaches, it just gets better and better and better. But again, you can have the best coaching staff ever. You got to go get the ingredients for those guys. Now, go ahead.
One thing I do want to say about this is it seems like they're getting younger guys that just like really connect well with players, which is like, here's the thing. Everybody thinks you need to have John Gruden in there, type of coach like that, where he's just screaming at the players the entire time. It does not necessarily always translate. So that's one thing to take into consideration. It seems like they're building a coaching staff of guys who are actually serious, very good at their job, and they're very good at their jobs, and they don't have to scream at people to get their message across. So, there's going to be accountability with this coaching staff because good coaches hold people accountable. And by all accounts, these coaches are very good at their jobs. So there's going to be accountability. It's not going to be screaming at people on the sidelines because just because you scream doesn't mean that you're a good coach. And that's what I would say about that. It seems like they're building a younger coaching staff, and maybe there's some guys that maybe they start to build some trees here of coaching staff, from their coaching staff, which would be fantastic. Like that is a good thing. If you're able to efficiently target coaches, promote them, and consistently do that, and teams want to poach those coaches from you, that's a good thing. Like that means that you have good decision makers with your coaching staff that is able to consistently hire really good coaches. And one more thing I'll add to this, for the amount of shit that we give the front office, and rightfully so, not defending anything that they do, the last two coordinators, defensive coordinators they hired, good hires. So that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I think that that's really where it's at, is you look at what they've done and you have to applaud it, whether we want to continue. Look, I'm not giving the front office full on credit. Yeah, but you got to be fair, right? And the whole idea of having a coaching tree stem from your head coach is big in my opinion as well, because to your point, it shows you how good of a decision maker you have as a head coach and leader, and also how they're aligned with your front office. But also, it shows that you have a well-run football program where you have guys that can come in here, do a great job, continue to push your program in the right direction, and they can leave and they can continue to keep succeeding elsewhere. Now, I did want to just double check the ages. There is one more guy, Nick Sorensen, and I'm just double checking. So he is your special teams coordinator. He had been with Brian Schottenheimer in Seattle, as well as he was just recently the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. And he was the most recent special teams coordinator gig he had was with the Jags in 2021, and they weren't a good unit. And people were trying to translate the idea that because he wasn't a good defensive coordinator guy means he's not going to be a good special teams guy. I mean, I don't know. I will say I did look into that unit that the Jags had. They did not have great statistics when you look. So I do have to caution that. But again, I think for me at least, the one thing we're not going to have is the tomfoolery that John Fossil had done. And I think that that's all we care about at this point. So, nah, man, I just think at the end of the day, we have to be in a situation where, I mean, for special teams, they matter. But to me, you need the personnel more than you need a coach. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but it is what it is. Now, age-wise, Chris, this really shocked me, right? When I saw the ages of all of the coordinators, your main coordinators and your head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, he's 51, will be 52 this year. Klayton Adams, he's going to turn 42 on the 13th of February. Matt Eberflus, who's the oldest guy of the bunch, 54 to be 55 this year. Nick Sorensen will be 47 this year. He's currently 46. What is crazy to me is that these guys, this is probably the youngest coach, which I'm not saying much because these guys are in their 40s and 50s.
I think it's just like anything, Space. I think it's just like anything. We got to get young coaches in here, and they got to do the job, and it's just like anything. Yeah, I am not going to miss having a bunch of fossils, pun intended, on our coaching staff, especially Mike McCarthy. So, yeah, no, I like that. Like, the league is going younger. This is for the most part, this is a young man's game. Now, granted, there are coaches that are able to transcend that, right? Sean Payton, excellent job. John Harbaugh, excellent job. But there's a lot of coaches out there that, you bring them in like a Mike McCarthy type, and they can't catch up with the league. So.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So I did want to move over to the conversation about free agents targets the Cowboys can go after, because we did kind of set the tone in the previous episode and even the episode before that, what they have to do in free agency, and they got a lot of work to do, right? They have the vision. We're seeing that, but now you got to make it a reality, right? So there were a couple names that I wanted to throw out right now. And the first one, and I'm going to give you credit to this, and you can talk about more about it, is Will Hernandez, the guard from Arizona. Now he's 29 years old, so I believe he'll be 30 this year. His market value is projected to be around $4 to $5 million. You could probably get him in a situation where it's like a 2, maybe a 3-year deal with the option year, basically, like the guaranteed money gives him 2 years, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about why that connection makes sense as to why they should go after Will Hernandez, because you talked about it before.
You ready for the main connection? He tore his ACL last year. So Cowboys see that and they're like, let's go. No, but Klayton Adams obviously played, Will Hernandez obviously played under Klayton Adams. Klayton Adams did a lot of really good things with Will Hernandez's development. Nasty, mean, physical offensive lineman. That's one of the characteristics that you put on that Arizona offensive line the last 2 years. And, that's the type of guy, veteran guy. Obviously, like, he is a legit NFL starter. Is he, Zach Martin in his prime? Not close. But is he a legit NFL starter? Absolutely. If he's your fourth or fifth best lineman, you have a really good offensive line. So, with the intricacies of what Klayton Adams wants to do with running the football, I think that bringing in a guy that's familiar with his scheme that can also teach some of the young guys, on the offensive line, when you look at BB Smith and Guyton, he can help bring those guys along and say, hey, when we're pulling on this play, you want to make sure that you're attacking the outside angle, like small details like that, that are going to, I think that are going to help this young offensive line, kind of grasp some of the intricacies of what Klayton Adams wants to do.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that, again, even if hypothetically, right, you're going to go after him, if let's just say Zach Martin comes back, I would still be interested in bringing him in as a backup / depth piece, because like, you need to have that. I mean, looking at where you're at, if you do lose Zach Martin, and you're probably going to retirement unless he elects to come back, what worries me is you're not prepared for that. Like, people talk about like Brock Hoffman, and I love Brock Hoffman. I think he'd be a fantastic starter. As we saw him play right guard, he did very well for himself at that position.
I'm going to go on a small rant about that after you're done.
Yeah. But no, like, my thing is that we need to realize that we cannot spend first round picks on O-linemen unless, like, of course, they're the best player available. I'm not going to judge that. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to do that. But given with how this team is constructed, you don't have the luxury to go after an offensive lineman. Like, you invested in Tyler Guyton, which there are pieces there physically where if he's coached up right, that's why I love the Klayton Adams hire, because I feel like you can coach up Tyler Guyton to be a good tackle in this league. Terrence Steele, there are still semblances of him being a good tackle. And the thing is that, will he be an all-pro, like, at that level again? I don't know. But the thing is that with how Mike Solari did his job, it's really affecting how we evaluate these O-linemen, because he did such a poor job. The only guy that really was not affected by this, in my opinion, was Cooper Beebe. And even at that, he still did a fantastic job. So I feel like the Cowboys have the pieces. And by the way, none of these, the only guy that's like your old head on the O-line is Zach Martin. So to me, you have all the pieces there. They're not going to let go of Terrence Steele. I don't think they are. And that's okay with me. If you're not going to let go of these guys, you need to go get coaches that will work with these guys, because it's clear that when Mike Solari came in here to be the new O-line coach, shit fell apart, and I hated it. And then really, we can go over other targets, but I'll let you go on your mini rant. Getting a guy like a Will Hernandez, and that's not the only dude that I'm looking at here, right? There were talks about you go after Ryan Kelly, the center from Indianapolis, and I'm cool with that. And you can move Cooper Beebe to guard if you want to play him, right? And I think that the other thing too is you have, we've talked about, Trey Smith, even though that's probably not going to happen, but you also have a guy like Mekhi Becton out of Philadelphia that you could move him to guard as well. But like, that's where you want to have that happen, is you want to have your core guys. And then after your core guys, then you just, go around that. The Cowboys did this with Frederick, Martin, and Tyron. They rotated guys with like La'el Collins, Doug Free, Ronald Leary, Jonathan Cooper. You could throw all the names in there, and they were still a productive unit. You don't need all pro. I mean, I'm welcoming it, but that's where all my soliloquy on that. You don't need a first-round picks on every single part of the line. So,
yeah, I need to say this because, one thing that, has been coming across my feed ever since I tweeted out that, Will Hernandez possibility is, well, we have Brock Hoffman, and I like Brock Hoffman. And this mini rant that I'm about to go on has nothing to do with Brock Hoffman as a person or as a player. He is a good backup offensive lineman, but that's what he is. The Cowboys fans need to stop campaigning for people who have not proven that they can be NFL starters. That's why the team this year wasn't that good, because they moved on from people and they said, oh, you want to know what? Jalen Tolbert, we feel good about you as a number 2 receiver. Go ahead and do it. Nope, not good enough. They had Kalen Carson as their starting cornerback to start the year. Not good enough. They have players in different positions. Not good enough. Mozzie Smith, not good enough. Like, these guys were not good enough. And yet the Cowboys said, hey, you want to know what? Jalen Brooks is going to step up. Not good enough. This guy's going to step up. Not good enough. Deuce Vaughn, not good enough. Like, we need to push the front office to sign actual NFL starting caliber players. And you want to know what? That makes your team better, because if you like Brock Hoffman, guess what? If Brock Hoffman's your backup center or backup guard, well, that's pretty damn good. If you think that highly of the player, you bring in a better player, and guess what? Now you have depth on your roster. We cannot take the pressure off the front office. They need to get a legitimate number 2 wide receiver option. They need to get a legitimate right guard. They need to get legitimate defensive tackles. They need to get another legitimate cornerback on this football team. They need to get NFL players and stop relying on 5th and 6th round and undrafted free agents and think that you're going to get anywhere. No other team operates like this. No other team does. Unless those 5th, 6th, 7th round picks have shown that over the course of a season, no, they are legitimate starters and have proven that throughout the course of the season, then yeah, sure. Obviously, like Deron Bland.
Yeah.
You got lucky with him. You got lucky with multiple players on this team that you drafted late. But guess what? Luck eventually runs out, and it ran out this season because those 5th, 6th, 7th round undrafted free agents that you have relied on in the past, they weren't good enough this year. And that's my
for sure. No, and you're absolutely right. Like, look, I think that for me, like, do I think Brock Hoffman's good in the sense of what he's asked to do? Yeah, a backup guard and a backup center who has the potential to be a starting guard. When he came into the league, I was a big fan of him coming out of college. And I felt like if he develops properly, he could be that. The thing is, and this is where I agree with you, is that I don't like how we're in a position where we're forcing these guys to be starters, and then the fans like us have to expect these guys to perform at an all-pro level to make up for the deficiencies of the front office. I've been very vocal on that. And that's where, like, when we talk about you go after, like, even if it's 2 guards or a tackle, or like if you were to tell me, Space, we went after and got Will Hernandez and throw another name in there. Like, let's just say we luckily get both Ryan Kelly and what's his face? Will Hernandez, right? So now you're in a situation where it's a good problem to have. You have 2 quality starting centers. You have a guy that can play guard and center. You have 2 guys that could do that, But my point is you have a good problem to have, and also you're not forced to. Like, if BB didn't pan out, we're having a completely different conversation this year, talking about how you literally got this guy and he did it, but he did. You got lucky. So now the question is, and I'm not a fan of playing musical chairs. This is where long-term you have to make a decision, right? Because with Tyler Guyton, if you want him to be the left tackle, then make him the left tackle and don't move him at all, because it's very hard with these younger players. There's only a select few guys that can move around and still be very good. Right. And that's why I hate for some of these young guys is that you place them somewhere and you don't let them develop. This even goes not even just the O-line, but any position group, right? Really, the last hit you've had in the Mike McCarthy era for 5th or for day 3 picks, which I'm saying like 5 through 7, is what, Deron Bland, right?
Yeah,
like he's like the only hit they've had. And when I say a hit, not like, oh, you're a solid starter, like not an Anthony Brown type of finding where like you have a solid starter at best, right? You have a guy that is a legit all-pro.
I'd say Ferguson too.
Ferguson in round 4, yeah, for sure. But again, like my point is just like you can't, to what you're saying and echoing that sentiment, you can't rely on day 3 picks to save your franchise. And that's where if you go into the draft, or excuse me, if you go into free agency and you get those players, like if they do what they did in the first couple of years of the Mike McCarthy experiment, where they added a ton of players in here, right, to infuse the team with talent. Not saying they were all great signings, but if you're going to sign a bunch of guys like depth, possible starters, you name it, you got to do that. Otherwise, you're in a situation like you were in 2022 and even last year, where you're like begging that everyone overperforms so that you can win. So I hate to go on that. Defensively, I think you need to add a linebacker too.
One thing.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I thought
Go
you were
go for it. No, go for it. Go for it. And then
Here's
we'll move
the thing
on.
with Ryan Kelly that I really like this idea. All right, so he's 31 years old right now. He could easily play another 4 years. You attach him with Dak and Brian Schottenheimer, right? You have him next to BB and Tyler Smith there. And what I really like about that idea is that you have a veteran center that's going to be able to communicate things at the line of scrimmage. And you have a veteran quarterback being able to do that. And then you have your badass guards who are just going to kick the shit out of people on the interior. Like the thing is, guard and center, the way you block is different. So when you look at Cooper Beebe and he's able to manhandle people playing at center, I think that translates to guard very well, because when you're playing center, you're snapping and then you're setting your hands. With guard, you're just popping out, setting your hands. There is no snap set. It's just boom, set. Now I'm beating the shit out of somebody, and I don't have to worry about getting the ball there and then doing that. So if you get an experienced guy to come in here that has played center for a long time, and you get BB and Tyler Smith next to you, you're going to start beating the shit out of teams. And then you just hope Tyler Guyton develops here, which I think under Klayton Adams and whoever they bring in as an offensive line coach, I would expect that they're going to hire a very good offensive line coach, because so far it seems like that they're hiring qualified people that people want on their coaching staffs. Like, you look at this running back coach search. I mean, they're looking at sought after candidates. Same thing with the other hires that they have on this team. Teams are competing to hire these guys. Arizona wanted to sign Klayton Adams to a more lucrative contract to be the offensive line coach. They couldn't reach the number that the Cowboys were willing to give him to be the offensive coordinator. When you look at the defensive line coach, people wanted him. The special teams coordinator, San Francisco wanted him. All these coaches are people that people wanted outside of the head coach. Right. But, we'll see. Maybe something happens there. But yeah, that's my thing, man. You add Ryan Kelly, you add a veteran center, still has good football ahead of him, and you pair him with a veteran quarterback. That to me is something that I'm definitely open to.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I don't think it's gonna cost you a whole lot at all. Like, you can make the room, and that's where I think they got to do. Like, don't make them say, oh, well, we can't do this because we're saving for money. No, they ain't doing that crap. No, you win now. But at the end of the day,
we got it. We got to make sure that we got enough money for that Micah.
That Micah contract's coming down the road. At the end of the day, Okay, so I did want to talk about a couple defensive free agents that I was looking for the Cowboys to go after, and then we're going to quickly get into the expectations we have for Shotty for this first year, and then we'll do the mock draft 2.0. But before we get into that, if you guys can hit the like button, share this, heart it, whatever you're looking to do, subscribe, all that stuff. Make sure to do it now, just so I don't forget. So go ahead and do that now. It's super easy and free to do. All right, so a couple guys on the defensive side of the ball that I was looking at. Now, of course, I would love to bring Eric Kendricks back on like a 1 or 2 year deal, and kind of just let him run out that deal. But as a veteran, right? Not necessarily like for him to be a starter, because he's going to be 33 and he's going to get older. A lot of the times when I'm asking for guys that are 33 and older to be in the linebacker room, it's just because of the veteran presence and stuff like that. And even at his age, he was doing very well. But I don't want to commit to Kendricks long term. Another guy, or a couple guys that I was looking at, of course, was Devin White out of right now. I believe he was playing for Houston. So I would be interested in bringing him in. He's a younger guy. He's going to be 27. Again, this is a guy that's not going to cost you a whole lot. But also on top of that, he has played the position pretty good. Another guy that I'm a big fan of is Chris Barnes out of Arizona. I think that he can come in here and be solid for you. You just need bodies in the room. You need solid bodies.
He's a free agent, right?
Let me see. I think he is too. I thought I saw his name.
If so, I'd be interested in that because I want, like, when you look at this division, right? I want linebackers that can move sideline to sideline because when you have Saquon Barkley with those outside runs, like we saw with the Commanders and Bobby Wagner, not good enough because he couldn't reach the sideline. Like he's not a sideline to sideline guy. You know, if you're going north to south, that's your guy because he's a thumper. But when you got to start moving sideline,
he is a free agent.
Yeah, and you get these linebackers out in space. That's where Philly kills you. And right now, we got to build a team to beat Philly. Like you got to build a team to beat your division. So that's where I'm looking like, man, Overshone, it would have been great if he didn't get injured because he's like the perfect type of linebacker to have, you know, in this division. And I expect that the Commanders are going to go out there, probably draft or sign a running back, you know, and I mean, that's, I think, what we're looking at.
Right. And Stevie Mack, and I did check on Twitter, it's official that Myles Garrett did request a trade from the
Cleveland. I met Myles Garrett before. He's a super cool dude.
Yeah, dude, I oh my God, dude, what I would have done to have him in Dallas when he was going to get drafted. Like I was
super cool, dude.
Dude, he would be awesome here. But yeah, we know we'll see because again, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but I would definitely be interested if he's available. You know, you can't have enough. Like I think if you're having D-Law come off the books, I wouldn't mind going after him. But again, knowing this front office, they're not going to do that.
I got something to show because I know that there are some hurt Mavs fans. This is funny. They'll like this. Yo, dude, AI is crazy, man.
Did you see? So for those that don't know, just a quick tangent, and then I actually want to move on. This is the same guy. The Mavs GM is the same dude that was trying to sell Steph Curry on joining the Nike brand at the time before he went to Under Armour for his exclusive brand. He called him his brother's name, Seth, and allegedly showed the same presentation he showed that Kevin Durant got. And this is also the same guy that, like, oh my God, he wanted to act like he let Jason Kidd go. Like he took like a couple questions and then he left. Yeah, I hate this guy. I've never liked Nico Harrison. I'm not a Mavs fan. But fuck him. I will say that. So, but yes, Kazir White is a free agent. And I guess my key point is you have to get bodies in the room. And that's where I'm looking at. Like whether, even on the defensive line, whether it's like Kinlaw or other dudes in that realm, like if you're getting that quality of player, again, not to be like a full on, like he's going to be a starter, like a rotational guy, that's fine. That's all I'm looking for. And then if they want to go into the draft and get their starters, that's fine. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
And here's the thing about defensive tackle, right? You know, adding guys to a rotation is huge. I think that if you re-sign Osa, you will get a better version of Osa Odighizuwa if you build out the depth in that defensive line room because, you know, you're giving Osa less snaps. That's going to mean a lot for, you know, hey, we need you to fire off the ball and we need a sack here. You know, it's different when you got him, you know, playing 90% of the snaps and he's playing the run and he's getting double teamed in the run game. You know, if you say, hey, Osa, we want you to be a 2-down player. We want you to come in, you know, obvious passing situations and then play some reps on early downs. Man, you're going to get a better player because Osa is a high motor player, but there's only so much you can put on somebody's body. Like this isn't Jalen Carter, for example, where that guy can play 100% of the snaps and he's just as good at the end of the game as he is in the beginning of the game. That's not the type of player Osa Odighizuwa is. And that's fine. You have that caliber of player on your defense in Micah Parsons. I think a better player, to be honest with you. But, that's the thing. If you add guys to a rotation and you're rotating these guys in and out, and we're asking Osa to play 65% of the snaps, you're probably going to get a better player there. So that's the way I look at it.
Oh yeah, and that's a great, fantastic points there, and that's why especially if you're this goes for any position, more specifically on the defensive side of the ball. That's why we need bodies in the room, and that's why when you see guys like we talk about even with Micah, people talk, well, Micah breaks out at the end. Yeah, bro, because you have no one else to kind of pick up the mantle and get him off the field so he can rest, bro. That's where I'm very big on adding good players, solid players. That's where if you go into the bargain bin and add a couple players, I'm not going to be mad at that, but you do have the money and the resources to go after these players. Point blank, period. And don't let them tell you otherwise. But I did, as we're getting closer to 12 o'clock, wanted to go over the Dallas Cowboys expectations for the first year under Brian Schottenheimer. Of course, we do not know what the roster is going to fully look like, but we now know a general sense of, we know the coordinators, but we don't know the other position coaches, right? For reference, here are the opponents you will play. Of course, you're going to play the Giants, Eagles, and Commanders twice. They're in division.
I think you're going 4-2 in those games.
Yeah, I think you can go 4-2 in those games as well. Until otherwise proven, I think you're going to take care of the Giants. They're a mess right now. And then I do think you can split. Worst case, you could split. Because the way I look at it, bro, is that you should have beaten the Commanders this year. You should have swept them, but you didn't. It's okay. Again, because we weren't we were doing anything else.
Yeah, I think they either sweep the Commanders or split with the Commanders in Philly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you can go 4-2 or 5-1 in division, just because we've played very well in division. And especially with some of these players and how they play within the division, really good. For our conference opponents in the NFC North, you're going to be playing the NFC North this year, more specifically to word it. You got Green Bay, you got Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit. So you will be playing those teams again. I think that. As you're currently constructed, I think that you can maybe beat the Bears. Well, not maybe, I'm sorry. I think you can beat the Bears, but the other thing too is just, I think it comes down to how Minnesota handles their quarterback situation, because they have a good team, but you've got Minnesota's number. So I think you can at minimum go 2-2 in that stretch. Again, I'm just trying to be realistic, just looking how the roster is built and how I think they're going to build it. I think you'll go 2-2 in that stretch. So I'm just sorry. I think
3-1 is the number. I think 3-1 is the number.
You think they can go 3-1, or you think that's the goal?
I think 3-1. I think they go 3-1 just because I'm not, even though the Packers beat the hell out of us in the playoffs last year, I'm not sold on that team at all. I was never sold. Even last offseason. And I don't mean to say this because there are people, who are you to talk? They beat your team. I'm a football fan. That's why I can talk. So I never bought into the Packers, even when they were making these signings. I'm not bought into Jordan Love. I don't think he's nearly as good as everybody tells me he is. I actually think he holds back their offense Matt LaFleur schemed up some really easy looks for him, and he would miss some of those easy looks. I think you can beat the Packers. I think you can beat the Vikings. I really do. I think you could beat the Bears. We'll see what happens with Ben Johnson next year. I think, you can beat every team in this division, because I do think that the Lions are going to have a little bit of a setback due to the fact that they have 2 new coordinators, on top of the fact that they have a lot of free agents leaving that team this year. So I think you're probably going to get a different looking team out of the Detroit Lions next year. So that's why I put 3-1, because I don't think you're going to beat all of those teams, but I think you can beat all those teams.
Gotcha. And then you will also, I think the last 2 conference opponents you're going to have are based off our division placement, and that would be Arizona and Carolina, which for sure you can beat those teams. You can, but we've had so many issues playing Arizona. We've lost, I think, 7 out of 8. So if the trend holds, you won't win that game just because we always, for some reason, lose to Arizona. But again, still a winnable game for sure. And also you have Klayton Adams that wants to show up his former team too. And then we get to your interconference opponents. Okay. So you're going to be playing the AFC West this go around. That's the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. And then I'll just throw in the final conference opponent because of division. The interconference opponent is the New York Jets due to division placement. So really, I look at this and I would say that with how you're currently constructed, and if they do what they did last year, like if they go with that, I think that this is probably a 7 to 10 win team. But if they properly build the team, I think that you have a 10 plus win team on this horizon that we're seeing. And so with that, right, what are the expectations this year? The good news is if you're a Cowboys fan that hates having expectations because it makes the team play worse, good news is no one's going to think the Cowboys are going to do anything. That's great, right? Kind of like how they thought we weren't going to do much this year, but again, everyone got hurt, not like we were going anywhere. But to me, we understand the standard is winning a championship for sure. I'm not negating that, but we also kind of look at it like, okay, if you add the pieces you're going to add and you are healthy, I think to me, getting to the playoffs and winning the NFC East is the goal, and then anything and winning a playoff game. Right now, that is my barometer for what would satisfy me in the sense. I'm not saying like that's successful. Like I don't want to get bounced in the division around again for sure. I don't think anyone wants to see that. But the main thing is that if they're going through a mini retooling, right? Like if they're going to go through this process right now, that's where I think the Cowboys ceiling is. I think, or more specifically, like if the ceiling right now, I think is this team, if the matchup's good, they'll win a playoff game. That's how I feel like they're currently constructed, like right now. Or rather, right now, they don't make the playoffs. I'm sorry. What I am getting at is if they do what I think they're going to do and they add a little bit of talent with how they go about it, they'll probably win a playoff game depending on the matchup. But again, this is a long-term thing. Like, what are you going to do to build that program? So for me, a successful season under Brian Schottenheimer would be not just results. Vision is my main goal. Are we going to get the vision that you want? Are we going to see a consistent game plan week in and week out? Are we going to see that executed week in and week out? Even if they miss the playoffs and they manage to put pen to paper of what they want to do and we see something coming along, I'll be pleased. However, if we do get what happened in 2024 where it's so hit or miss of what we're trying to do and it's just the clusterfuck, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to have problems. But to me, if we're talking about record-wise, you put a gun to my head, Space, what do you think? I think to me the goal is make the postseason and just see what happens. But on the field, just having an identity, point blank period. I do not care what the results say. You need to give me an identity.
I think, here's the thing. To me, like this was a 7-win football team last year. And look, like obviously 7 wins isn't great. I think if you have better quarterback play, you win 9 games last year. I think you beat Houston. I think you beat Cincinnati. And I think you beat the Commanders at the end of the year. That's 3. And that first game in Philly was very competitive in the first half. And then the dam just broke because the quarterback play was so damn bad.
We were close, dude. We were close to winning 10 games this year. People don't realize that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, and we wouldn't. I don't think we would have been in the playoffs. But point being is like, if Dak Prescott's healthy, this team does make the postseason. We probably are in a situation where, if let's say we're probably playing the Commanders for the final spot in the postseason, and we just go from there. Not saying we would have gone far. And I think that's the key thing is like people like not to disregard what you're, and I'll get back, not to, but
they were the 6th seed going. I think they would have went to Tampa Bay. I think they would.
Yeah, they would have probably. They could have.
They beat Tampa Bay this year. Like I think if Dak was playing quarterback this year for the entire season, you beat Washington in that Week 18 game. You beat Cincinnati, and I think you beat the Houston Texans. You're probably going to have to win another one of those games that you lost along the way. But man, if they would have made the playoffs, they would have been what, the 7th or 6th seed. You're playing teams like this. This team has had success against Philadelphia. They can play with Philadelphia, and especially with the way Jalen Hurts was playing in those 2 games in the playoffs, I think you would have given Philadelphia or Tampa Bay a real run for their money.
That's what I'm saying. To your point, like, and I don't mean to hijack it, because we definitely want to make sure you get what you got to say. But that's where I'm like, had the Cowboys made the postseason, depending on who they played, they probably would have won a game. Like, that's kind of how I felt in 2022. It would have been the same thing for me. Like, okay, if they do make the playoffs, it's just a matter of who they play. They evidently that year played Tampa Bay. I think to your point, if they play Tampa Bay, they probably beat Tampa Bay. If not, it's a close game. But I just think that the fact they were in the playoff chase, despite going on a 5-game losing streak, despite all the wacky shit that happened at the end of the year, like, think about it, man. We were 2 wacky wins away from having a winning season under Mike McCarthy in this, whatever the hell you want to call it, year. A special teams mishap and a defensive lapse against Marcus Mariota from being 9-8. That's the margins that we were in. And so, if you want to finish your point, please go ahead. I apologize that I interjected,
you're good. If you got something to get off, always feel free. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I do think this team is going to be a much better team next season. Now, much better. Like, am I telling people they're going to win the Super Bowl next year? No.
Oh, no.
Am I telling people they're going to make the playoffs? Yeah, I feel comfortable saying they're probably going to make the playoffs next year, because you have, Jayden Daniels, excellent rookie season. Let's see if he continues that, because everybody told me after CJ Stroud had his great season, he was the best rookie quarterback ever, and he had a dud in his second season. Everyone told me that the Texans were going to be great. I said CJ Stroud was going to have a sophomore slump, and the Texans were not going to be as good as everybody said they were. Now, they made the divisional round. Credit to them. You said this a few minutes ago. It's about who you played. They got a good matchup, and, they won that matchup. Credit to them. Salute to them. But, just because a team has a really good year under a rookie quarterback doesn't mean that that's going to transfer over. I mean, this is what I want to tell Cowboys fans about the Commanders. Like, when you look at some of their best players outside of the quarterback, McLaurin starting to get up there in age. Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen starting to get up there in age. Austin Eckler was a solid piece for them this year, getting up there in age. Zach Ertz, solid piece for them this year, getting up there in age. They have not drafted well enough to make you say, hey, this is going to be a team that you have to look out for in the coming years here. I mean, their 2 previous first-round picks were Emmanuel Forbes and Jahan Dotson. Neither of those guys are on the team. Now, I like Mike Sanistro. I think he's going to be an elite corner in this league. But, I mean, I'm not as scared about Washington going forward. They had a great season. Credit to them. They made the NFC Championship game. I would also say this, right? The Houston Texans, if last year's Houston Texans played in this year's NFC, they probably make the conference championship game as well. The only reason why they didn't make it last year to the AFC Championship game is because they played the best team in the league in Baltimore last year, like the best regular season team in the league in Baltimore last year. I mean, who'd the Commanders play? They played Detroit. That was an excellent.
Yeah, they played Detroit. Which was a great matchup.
Depleted defense, right? I think the Texans would have been able to win that game. And then we're talking about CJ Stroud, best rookie season ever, So that's kind of my thing. Like, to bring it back to my point, I think you have a top 2 quarterback in the conference. We'll see where, Stafford, does he keep that same level of play, or does his age start to come into play here? Does Jayden Daniels continue to improve? But that's the thing. You have a top 2 quarterback in your conference. You have top 2 receiver in the conference in CeeDee Lamb. You have all these things working for you. So to me, if they build out the depth of this team, they draft well, the young players continue to develop, they'll make the playoffs.
Right. And that's the thing, man, is like, clearly, like, you can probably have, like, look, Dak's been hurt, and we'll see if he continues to be seriously hurt. But, like, at the end of the day, man, like, you need a quarterback to at least have a chance. For sure. Dak Prescott gives you a chance. Whether you are a fan of him or not, you think he's bad or this, bro, you can't tell me with a straight face that he's not a top 10 quarterback. You cannot tell me with a straight face that you don't think the Cowboys have a chance to win playoff games under him. Oh, well, Deke chokes in the blood. Look, even though there's enough sample sizes to know he doesn't choke in the playoffs, he has had bad games. I'm not digressing that, but when you have more and more games under your belt, that tends to happen. Like, we've seen the greats go through this. So that's where I'm not like, here's the thing. If people are seriously going to put Lamar Jackson on a pedestal for now going to have 3 MVPs and 3 playoff wins, again, when the playoff wins are a team stat, I'm not trying to be one of those people.
Organizational stat.
It's an organizational stat. But my thing is that Lamar Jackson has not played well in the playoffs, except for maybe 1 or 2 of the games he's played in. But people want to give him a pass and talk about, well, Peyton Manning didn't win his first championship till he was this year. Like, I don't give a shit anymore because you guys aren't giving the same. Like, we're not doing this. So to end this, and we'll get into the mock draft, Dak Prescott, as long as he is playing how he's playing, will give you a chance. You can't tell me that when the Cowboys are fully healthy, they are not the 7th, at minimum, the 7th best team in the NFC. I do believe the Cowboys will be in the playoffs next year so long as everybody is healthy. I could promise you that. And on top of that, it's about matchups. The Cowboys, when you look at the matchups that they have had since they've gone in the 21st century, they've had the worst matchups you could possibly think of, except for maybe a couple where they should have won. I'm not digressing that. And again, that's no excuse to the players not performing well. That's no excuse to the coaches. My main thing is that when you look even in the Mike McCarthy era, they played the teams that gave them the most fits, which no team wanted to play. I remember I said it. I didn't want to play San Fran because I knew they were coming in hot in 2021. I talked about how I didn't want to play San Fran again but I knew we had a chance, but I didn't have a good feeling about that. But I was happy we played Tampa Bay. But had they won the division that year, they would have played the Giants in the first round of the postseason, or their first game, and they probably are in the NFC title game that year, right? Yeah, and then in 2023, what happened? They lost to the Packers, a team that came in scorching hot into the playoffs. I didn't want to play them. And lo and behold, they gave the 49ers a run for their money. So my last point I'm going to say for Cowboys fans out there just listening to this show, as long as you have your quarterback, you have a chance. Whether you think he's a certain guy or not, you can't tell me this guy, like, you can't tell me he's not better, or you can't tell me he is better than Jalen Hurts, and then bitch and complain that he is not playing well. Because the thing is at least Hurts has a system around him to succeed. Dak Prescott.
Yeah, he's a better Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. And so, like, again, and that's no insult to Hurts. It's just that I just don't like it when Cowboys fans want to say all of these other players are not good, then they're not better than Dak, but then crap on Dak Prescott. Point blank, period. And that's not me being a homer. That's not me being a Dak Prescott. No, I'm just speaking as a football fan. I would tell you right now, them extending Dak Prescott was not a mistake. You need long-term stability at the quarterback position. Whether he's hurt or not, that's another thing. I don't have a problem drafting a quarterback. It's just we have to recognize the situation we're in, guys. They're not going to dude. And also, I don't trust them to do a QB search. I don't. No. So I apologize to go a bit long-winded, but I do want to get into this mock draft before. And
two things. Well, one thing. Yeah, saying Dak is not an insult to saying Dak is better than Hurts isn't an insult to Hurts, but I could say some really insulting things about the way he plays that quarterback position. But that's beside the point. So one thing that one of the most surprising things of the weekend is that, dude, look at this, man. I posted something, bigger loss for Dallas, Luka Doncic or Mike McCarthy. I have no idea how Mike McCarthy didn't win this poll. I did that like just trolling.
That's funny.
But yeah, let's get into this mock draft here.
So as you're setting up the mock draft, I do want to set the table for those that are watching. The last mock draft we did was if we were the general managers of the Dallas Cowboys. We did lots of trades, and on top of that, people think that we didn't know what we were talking about, despite many of the players that we took have been heralded by others in this community that are very good draft experts, I would say. But that's okay. We're okay with having different opinions. I would say that if you are watching this and you feel like that the mock that you didn't like it because, you should have took this player, then put down in the comment section what you think we should have done. Do you think we should have drafted a different player? What would have you have done? You have the right to say that. That's okay. No hard feelings, man. I do mock drafts. I've been doing mock drafts for 10 years, and you're not gonna get it right for anybody, right? Also, this is gonna change, right? We're gonna see situations. Cool. We're gonna be in situations where the guys that we took won't be there. Or there might be guys that you thought were going to not be there. So we're going to go ahead and dive straight into this particular mock draft. And we're going to do
I'm trying to pull it up right now.
Yeah, take your time. No worries. So just to be very clear, we're going to do no trades. We're just going to pick where we're at. And we're just kind of talk through, like, now that we know what they want to do, because now we know who the coaches are, we're going to try and put together a situation like, what would the Cowboys do? And here we go. So we're going to do a full 7-round mock. Again, it's really like the first couple picks that we care about, and then we kind of just go from there. So let's get started. So Cam Ward, Abdul Carter. All right.
Shedeur Sanders not off the board yet. That's not good for Cowboys. Oh, Shedeur Sanders is on the board. Holy cow. Where did they... Is he off the board?
I think he went, didn't he?
No, he didn't.
Well, that is crazy. Well, I'm not taking him because
I'm not taking him either.
So I think that this is an easy pick, and that's that we're gonna. But before we go any further, I think that we clearly know now that if Ashton Jeanty is on the board, I think we're comfortable with saying he is the pick. So let's.
I like a lot of players on this board. I do like. Egbuka, Banks, but I mean, Genty's on the board. That to me is a blinking red light. Draft him, and I don't even think you have a discussion at that point.
Let's see, where does Shedeur go? What the hell? He went to the second round?
Yeah, first pick in the second round. See,
that isn't.
I have a blinking red light here on my board.
It was Zach Beck.
Jack Beach, yeah. And this to me
is Zach Beck. Jeez, I'm thinking of another guy I know. Jesus Christ. Jack Beck. I'm like, I have a buddy named Zach with the same last name. So I'm like, oh, it's him. But no, for sure. So I do believe that this is another great pick. You get another receiver in the room. And I think that, sorry, she's getting a text. I do think that this is also a great pick, but who else is on the board before we take him, if you don't mind? I want to just see.
Princely Human Yellen. I really like him. I think he's a good player. You have Cam Skidaboo.
What's up, Mike? I see in the chat.
Carson Schwezinger. I've heard some really good things about him. Haven't watched him yet. Iriante Ursary.
Okay.
Jalen Walker. Donovan Jackson.
I was gonna say I do like the defensive lineman out of Oregon. I was just seeing him. There it is, Derek Harmon. I'm a fan of his. Maybe second round's a bit too rich for me, but yeah, I think we go with Jack Beck. I think the Cowboys, you try to load out on another receiver. They got Jonathan Mingo. Well, bro, like you got to think about it this way: they want to get a young guy in here that has 4 years of control as well. So that's.
So here to me in the third round, if Max, I've heard so many good things about Maxwell Hairston. This is another player I have yet to watch. I'm about like 54 players in. I watched Trey Harris, Deion Walker, those guys, but I'm not. We drafted a receiver, and I'm not comfortable taking Deion Walker here in the third round. To me, I think this is Maxwell Hairston because you're going to be in a situation where you're probably going to have to pick between Diggs and Bland. I think Bland is the right pick there. Jordan Lewis is getting a bit older. So to me, this is a pretty easy. I mean, Jonah here, he could play offensive line for you. You probably play him at guard, but to me, this is I want to get better in our secondary and add another reliable piece there.
Right. No, I agree. So, like, that's the thing is that I do think that the Cowboys are going to take another corner this year. I think that, to your point, one of the big things is what happens with Diggs. He's going to be on the team next year, and then I think after this upcoming year, you have an out, and I think that makes sense. And again, we're not going to do any trades for those watching. You guys can go actually check the first mock draft we did last week if you want to see what we would have done with trades and stuff like that. But let's go with Maxwell Harrison, man. I think that is a great pick given the matter of, you're going to probably need another corner in the room because if Diggs is anything like his brother, which of course they're related, but no duh, injury prone, and that's not going to be good long term. But also, like, if you do lose Jordan Lewis, just as another point, if you do lose him, I think one of the big things is that you're going to need another corner.
Oh yeah, for sure. So a few guys that I watched here. I watched CJ West. I love CJ West. I think he's a legit NFL starter. Seth McLaughlin, he's a pretty decent center there. So, offensive line. Emory Jones is a guy that, people had a lot of expectations for going into the year. I like Jordan James a lot. Taj Brooks.
Yeah.
Like a spell back there.
I know that scroll down, I'm just seeing who else is on the Kobe King, being a Penn State guy, I think that he would fit well here in Dallas, especially with like being a solid depth piece for you. Again, once you get into like rounds 5 through 7, it's just about filling out the roster. Now at the quarterback room, I think that you do have, I would say, like, I wouldn't pull the trigger on a quarterback yet. I would probably pull a trigger in the 6th round, excuse me. But yeah, I'm saying let's go with CJ West here. Let's get another defensive lineman to add alongside Osa and company and keep this train moving.
With Osa and Mozzie too. I mean, he's your prototypical nose tackle type, but he plays with really good range, very powerful, good with his hands. So I'd be very good here.
Let's see here. I'm probably gonna take. If it were me, I'm probably going Kyle McCord here. Just because now you could just will the Cowboys draft a quarterback? Probably not. I'd be shocked. But because of the fact that if we're kind of going through the method, if that follows through, which is that they typically have a 3-quarterback setup, if that is adopted by Brian Schottenheimer, I would hope that they do invest in a quarterback, especially one that you'll have control over for 4 years. I've watched Syracuse football. I think Kyle McCord would be a solid developmental quarterback for you.
I've watched Kyle McCord since St. Joe's Prep. So but here's where I'm going to push back. This team needs a linebacker. So to me, I'm not even saying this because I'm an Ohio State fan. Cody Simon is to me the pick here because you look at Buffalo. I think they're going to take this guy off the board from us.
Yeah, and you could probably take him in the next pick. Let's do that. Yeah, because yep.
And then boom, we have Kyle McCord right there for us. I'm cool with taking him. You cool with taking him?
Yeah. Let's go with that. Mm-hmm.
And then here, you want to know what? I think that this would be. Ooh, I really like Jordan James. I know we drafted a running back.
But so here's the thing: is that
let's check tight ends.
Yeah, because I really like Gaddison. I think Gaddison would be and because the last time we did this, Gaddison wasn't there in round 7. So to me, I would take, I'll take Gaddison here, and here's why. This just if you've watched Syracuse football, this guy, I think he's going to shoot up the draft. Where I think he'll be a day 2 pick this year. I really do. I'm absolutely shocked he's going this late on day 3. But to me, I think that the reason why you also take him is because I don't know what Jake Ferguson's going to look like long term. He's going to come up. He's coming up on a payday, and if you're going to roll with Luke Schoonmaker, at least get another dude in the room because you have Brevin Spann-Ford. I think that with him being restricted free agent, you have, I think, 2 more years of control before you got to tender him. But yeah, so let's see here.
I'm very interested here in Ollie Gordon. I know his stock has plummeted. Jake Majors is it? You want to know what I'd take
I
Jake.
would prefer Jake Majors, Jake Majors, because I kind of watching what Texas did this year and just looking at what he put on film. I think that he can probably be a Brock Hoffman type of player, where he could be at best a solid, at best I say decent, solid starter. But I think he's going to be relegated to backup duty in the NFL. But that's okay, can't have enough O linemen. And then
You know who I think will 100% be the pick here?
Shiloh.
I think that's going to be the pick, but I'm not.
I mean, we could do it for the jokes, but I mean, I don't care because again, once you get, so here's the thing, like once you get past a certain point and the guys that I want are gone, I could give a crap less what you do. So if we want to take another running back, if we want to go somewhere else, because this is a guy that's probably not going to make the team.
Oh, you want to know what? I watched Ty Robinson. There's LeJontay Wester. I watched Ty Robinson, very active defensive tackle, really big, really big. I think he's like 6'6", 330, somewhere around there. Let me see the measurables. 310. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is my pick here. All right,
go for it. I'm going to give you full reign to do that. I could care less what happens.
Ty Robinson.
So that's our draft. So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at how we did, and we'll probably get complaints about how we should have done this or that or whatever the case may be.
There's a lot of needs on the Cowboys, and if they don't address them in free agency,
it's very hard because like we're in a position where the Cowboys haven't made any moves yet, right? And I think that for me at least, like we have too many holes to fill. It is what it is. So let's go through it. So our first round pick is Ashton Jeanty, an A+. But again, like if you take him, I mean, if he's there, you take him. What a fantastic selection by that. And on top of that, you give Klayton Adams probably one of the better, kind of going through his career. I think he did have Jonathan Taylor at one point, but you give him arguably the most talented player he's worked with in the running back realm. Day 2, we went with Jack Beck, as well as Maxwell Hairston, and I think that is a good duo there. You get a guy that for the next 4 seasons you can pair alongside CeeDee Lamb. You get another weapon for Dak. And then also at the cornerback position, you probably fill the hole that is left by Jordan Lewis, as well as future-proofing yourself in the event that Trevon Diggs walks. Then you didn't have a 4th-round pick, but you had a couple picks in round 5. CJ West, we went with him in the last mock draft. Big fan of his after I started doing some research on him. Cody Simon, you're the Ohio State guy. I think that's, I've seen a couple bits of him. Kyle McCord, again, I've watched Syracuse football a ton.
Another Ohio State guy.
Another Ohio State guy, Kyle McCord, for those that don't know. And then Orandre Gaddison II. I've watched Syracuse football because I have some buddies that go to Syracuse, and they talk very highly of Gaddison. And just watching what he's done, I mean, I think that you can get something out of him. But again, I don't think he's going to be there in round 5. I think he's going to shoot up draft boards, and for it to be an F is a bit ridiculous. Jake Majors, again, backup center, possible starter if if you want to move him around, if he develops, and then Ty Robinson. You get another. So I mean, look. 2 defensive tackles. You get an offensive lineman. You get some weaponry and skill positions. I think that this is a pretty. I would say that this would be like the epitome of like a Brian Schottenheimer draft, where you're getting the weapons to work with.
Yeah, and I echo a lot of your sentiments here. I think if they're bringing in a high profile running back coach, I think it's because they want to invest at that position, and that's where I think they're going there.
Yeah, but no, man, this has definitely been fun. This was a bit quicker because we weren't trading as much. And again, for those that are enjoying this in the comment section, please, if you do feel like that, if you feel like, hey, how would this draft grade, put it down in the comment section below. And also say what you would have done. Hey, this is what my mock draft was. I'm always curious to see what people do, because there's so many different perspectives in this fan base as to like, okay, don't take this player, or no, you should take this player. That this is actually really good. But at the end of the day, once we see what the Cowboys are doing in free agency and how these prospects move, we'll be more definitive on who we think they're going to take. And obviously, like, we'll have more data to go through that. But Chris, I had nothing else for the show. I mean, was there anything else you had before we adjourn?
Nah, I'm good. Just make sure to follow us, Cowboys Beat. You can find me on X, YouTube, TikTok, all that stuff. And then, pointing over there to you, Space Cowboy Media.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So I'll go ahead and we'll close this thing out, guys. Listen, if you enjoyed this, we appreciate you for sticking around for the 5 episodes, and we're going to continue pumping these episodes out. And, it's been fun doing this as the Cowboys now got a new coach, new coordinators, and we are full steam ahead into the off season as we're now in February. So we're a month away from free agency hitting. Obviously, the Super Bowl is coming up next week, which we'll probably talk about that next go around and things we can see what happened, depending on how the result is. Hopefully the Eagles lose, but probably saying that they will win. But no, man, it's again always fun chopping up Cowboys talk with you. And look, we appreciate everyone. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that stuff you got to do to engage in the algorithm. And we will see you guys next week for another episode of Cowboys Roundup.
Peace.
Peace, guys.